What is up, my internet friends and family? I'm Charmx, and today I'm going to be reacting to 10 Unsolved Mysteries of World War I by All Time 10s. Now, All Time 10s make great videos, so I definitely recommend you go subscribe to them. That link's in the description. And with that being said, hopefully this is pretty interesting, and let's begin.
The First World War was a cataclysmic event that saw the participation of 32 countries and the deaths of more than 38 million people. But there are some stories that the history books couldn't quite cover. Stories that have been puzzling academics ever since. So stay tuned for a spooky ghost ship, a vicious sea monster, and a mysterious horde of military angels as we take a look at 10 unsolved mysteries of World War I. Number 10. The Lost Treasure of the Tsars. In the early 20th century, the 300-year-old Russian royal family was facing several serious threats.
I wonder how they lived that long. I mean, back then, they lived to like, I don't know, 60 or 70 years old. I'm joking.
Firstly, there was the shadow of World War I looming over them, a conflict that would eventually claim approximately 3 million Russian lives. Secondly, there was a growing discontent among their own people, which culminated in the revolutions in 1917. To protect his country's assets, Tsar Nicholas II ordered a huge quantity of the nation's gold reserves to be hidden. This has been estimated at 73% of Russia's gold, worth approximately $60 billion today. A popular legend is that the Tsar ordered those who hid the treasure to be immediately executed, so only he knew where it was. When he and his family were killed by communist revolutionaries in 1918, the secret died with him. To this day, no one knows where it is. Theories about where it could be have included the idea that it's stored in a series of secret vaults scattered across Siberia, or that it was sunk to the bottom of Lake Baikal. Considering that Lake Baikal contains more water than all of the North American Great Lakes combined, if this were true, it would be very unlikely for the gold to ever be found.
Why would you put it in a lake? That doesn't seem...
Who killed the Red Baron? Manfred von Richthofen, also known as the Red Baron, gained a widespread reputation as one of the deadliest fighter pilots of the First World War. Officially, he was credited with 80 air combat kills. For many of the Allied troops, the Red Baron was the face of the enemy, thus making him a hugely popular target. As a result, his death in April 1918 spawned a great deal of debate, with numerous individuals laying claim to being the one who brought him down. The most popular theory is that he was killed by Captain Roy Brown of the RAF, but critics say that his account of events is suspiciously lacking and doesn't quite tie up with eyewitness interpretations. Another idea is that he was shot down by a lone anonymous rifleman. Books, documentaries, and films have all been made discussing who fired that fatal shot, but the identity of the true assailant remains a mystery.
So he had like some of the most kills. He had like 80 kills, which is very impressive because back in World War I believe the life expectancy for a pilot was like a week or two. So I mean, 80 kills, you're one of the top.
Number 8. What happened to the crew of the Sabrina? The story of the Sabrina is so intriguingly haunting that it has gained a reputation as World War I's ghost ship. The Sabrina was a large sailing barge that, during the war, was deployed to haul coal between England and France. On the 17th of September 1917, the boat was found beached on Roselle Point in France. Apart from some slightly tangled sails, she was in pristine condition. The bizarre thing was that the crew was nowhere to be seen, and they would never be seen again. One possible explanation for the creepy abandoned ship was that the Sabrina had been caught in a ferocious storm, which had washed the crew overboard. Alternatively, the crew could have been attacked by German U-boats, who were known to target supply ships in the English Channel. However, the lack of damage to the boat seems to imply that neither of these explanations could be true.
That is very weird that a whole crew would just abandon their ship. And, you know, the argument that, it was attacked doesn't make sense because there was like no damage. And as for the argument that there was like some crazy weather going on, sure, a couple people could have been, you know, tossed overboard, but there are going to be some people, you know, in the hull of the ship, so they can't get tossed overboard, so they would still be in it. Now, what I think is more plausible is that, you know, they just all deserted. They decided to go to some place and leave it. You know, leave the war. They didn't want to be in it. So that is also possible. And it seems more of a possibility than the other two possible theories.
Number 7. Who killed Private John Parr? 17-year-old John Parr received the not-so-enviable accolade of being the first soldier in the British Commonwealth to be killed by enemy action in World War I. But the circumstances around the death are notably suspicious. Private Parr was a reconnaissance cyclist stationed near the village of Betigny in northern France. According to official reports, Parr was killed in 1914 when he ran into a German unit and was shot in the ensuing skirmish. But this seems peculiar, as the Germans were not known to be in that particular area until months later. Not only this, Parr's death was not officially acknowledged until more than 6 months afterwards. This implies that perhaps British authorities were trying to cover up something more incriminating. One possibility is that Parr was embarrassingly killed in the crossfire between unfamiliar British and Belgian troops who mistook each other for Germans. Parr's distraught mother regularly wrote to the British military for answers, but sadly they never came.
Yeah, that's probably what happened, because if the Germans weren't even in the area, the odds are he didn't get killed by a German. But if it was like, you know, a mishap and there was crossfire going on between, you know, two teams that are allies and they thought each other were Germans, that could have been what happened. And since, you know, his death wasn't reported until 6 months later, it sounds like they were trying to cover up something.
Number 6. Was a German submarine attacked by a sea monster?
Like a giant squid or something?
War was chaotic and confusing, and as a result, tales of supernatural and mythical forces were often put forward as explanations for events that soldiers struggled to explain. This was most likely the case with the bizarre events of April 1918, when a German submarine was allegedly attacked by a colossal sea creature. A British patrol boat was sailing the North Atlantic when it came across a German submarine floating on the surface. In order to investigate, the Britons cautiously approached the submarine, at which point the extremely frightened German crew immediately abandoned ship. According to the crew, they had briefly resurfaced when an extremely large, strange beast with tentacles and huge teeth climbed onto the side of the ship. The beast was similar to the legendary kraken that is featured in nautical mythology since the 13th century. Whether this was some kind of shared delusion, debris from an ocean storm, a giant octopus, or even a real kraken, what happened is likely to remain a mystery.
It sounds like it was just like a giant octopus that attacked it or something like that. I mean, we have them on freaking video now, so we know they exist. So it could have easily been just one of them friggin' attacking it.
Number 5. The mystery of the 1919 Kinmel Park mutiny. In a cemetery in a small village in Wales lie the graves of 5 Canadian soldiers who fought in World War I. Nothing unusual about that, but what is bizarre about the deaths of these soldiers is that they died shortly after the war finished, and they were not killed in combat, but apparently during a military mutiny in 1919. The mutiny took place in Kinmel Park, a military complex that was home to approximately 15,000 Canadian troops. It's thought that the riots were sparked by poor living conditions with limited food rations, overcrowded dorms, and no heating. Aside from this, very little is known about the Kinmel Park riots. Historians are perplexed as to what actually took place, who was involved, and how the events culminated in the deaths of these soldiers. No one was ever convicted for killing the men, and it doesn't feature in much official documentation. Perhaps something more sinister actually took place, and we'll never find out what.
Yeah, who knows what happened?
Number 4. What happened to Bela Kiss? When Hungarian tinsmith Bela Kiss was conscripted to fight in the First World War, he left behind a dark secret. At his home in the town of Kincota, Kiss's landlord discovered 24 dead bodies, all but one of which were female. The bodies had been strangled, pickled in alcohol, and sealed in metal drums. It emerged that Kiss had been placing lonely hearts ads in local newspapers, luring rich women in with promises of marriage, and then murdering them for their money. The search to find and arrest Kiss was complicated by the chaos of war and his relatively common name. He was nearly impossible to trace. Conflicting reports came in saying that he had fallen victim to yellow fever or had been sent to fight at the front. The one time authorities came close to him, tracking him down to a hospital, he switched a dead man's body for his own and made his escape. Despite the police's efforts, Bela Kiss never faced justice for his crimes.
So that guy was like a freaking psychopath or some shit. Was it 24 dead bodies at his home? And he would strangle women and then douse them in alcohol and then pickle them? That is so strange, and he never got caught.
Number 3. Who was the mysterious JM? Life in World War I trenches was tough, and many soldiers took to painting as a much-needed distraction. The artworks produced by painters such as Paul Nash have become some of the most important insights into the horrors of war
seen that picture
through the
before.
eyes of those who've lived it. Toward the end of the 20th century, a sketchbook of 130 watercolor and ink images was discovered in the archives of the University of Victoria in Canada. The paintings demonstrated extraordinary talent and were very moving depictions of war, death, and religion. Sadly, the artist who created these pieces is almost completely unknown. All that has been confirmed about him is that his initials were JM, he was based in France and Belgium, he had a daughter called Adele, and seeing as one painting was dated from 1920, he survived the war. Number 2. The Angels of Mons. In August 1914, barely a month into World War I, the British and French troops were on the back foot, surrounded by a massive German army just outside the Belgian city of Mons. The German army, 3 times the strength of the Allied troops, looked certain to annihilate their foes, when their advance suddenly halted and the British and French troops were able to retreat. Following this miraculous escape, an intriguing legend grew around the events in Mons, that the soldiers had been protected by some kind of divine force. This was first alluded to in letters written by Brigadier General John Charteris, who said, "The angel of the Lord on the traditional white horse and clad all in white with a flaming sword, faced the advancing Germans." Charteris was just recording the accounts of those who allegedly witnessed this divine event, but some people genuinely believed it to be real. The idea of the Angel of Mons captured the imagination of thousands around the world, and was mentioned in numerous contemporary newspapers. While it is likely the result of overactive imaginations in the heat of battle, it seems as though we will never know what truly happened on that fateful day. Number 1. What happened to the USS Cyclops? When it disappeared in March 1918, the loss of the USS Cyclops became the greatest loss of life that the US Navy had ever suffered in a single incident. 309 people had been on board the military cargo ship when it vanished without a trace en route from Barbados to Maryland. No wreckage or bodies were ever found. There were some alleged sightings of the USS Cyclops off the American coast, but none of these seemed to match up with the intended journey of the ship. Theories are abundant as to what could have happened. These range from the idea that it sank due to technical defects and overloading, to the thought that it could have been the victim of a hostile attack by enemy forces. Adding to the popular intrigue around this perplexing mystery is the fact that it disappeared within the so-called Bermuda Triangle, where numerous other ships and aircraft have vanished under similarly puzzling circumstances. Without a shipwreck to investigate, it is unlikely that we will ever know what happened to this unfortunate crew.
Alright, so, regarding the Bermuda Triangle, I saw something where they actually figured out what causes all of the issues around the Bermuda Triangle. Now, what I read was that, the clouds that form there are different compared to, normal clouds, so it has something to do with the clouds. I don't remember exactly what I read, but, it has something to do with the clouds, and that supposedly, like, I don't know, it causes crazy weather and shit like that to happen. So maybe that, like, sunk the ship. I guess that could be possible if it was in the Bermuda Triangle. Alright guys, hope you liked this video. This was very interesting. I would say probably the most interesting one was the ship that the whole crew had just disappeared from, because how does that happen? Unless there was like a mutiny, or everyone just decided that they didn't want to fight and just decided to leave. I don't know, but that's definitely the most interesting in my opinion. But anyway, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Possibly share it with a friend. If you're new, subscribe and join the family today. Also, make sure you go subscribe to All Time 10s. But with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Boop!